Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high.
You know what's scarier than monsters, ghosts, or gore? Being totally alone. That bone-deep solitude where the only sounds are your own breathing, and maybe something faint beyond the walls. Horror games live and breathe on that fear. It's not just jump scares. It's the void around you.
Doing down there? I'm curious. No. No. We're good. We'll figure out another way to live.
And today we're plunging into how games like Voices of the Void, SOMA, Subnautica, and Knock Knock weaponize loneliness to warp your mind. Why does loneliness terrify us so much? Because as social creatures, isolation messes with our brains at a physiological level. Dopamine tanks, cortisol spikes. We start to imagine eyes watching us in every shadow. Horror designers tap into that primal anxiety. The fear of being alone becomes your greatest enemy. Let's start with Voices of the Void. This surreal horror places you in a research station, tuning into cosmic signals with no human contact, only endless static. One critic described it as electric void of shared virtual fantasies, where the screen and its silence becomes the only companion YouTube plus one gamedeveloper.com. The isolation isn't just visual, it's existential. The player becomes aware that everything they see and feel is generated by the game and by themselves. Moving to SOMA, the isolation theme deepens. Here, the protagonist drifts through an abandoned oceanic research facility, and even the AI you interact with might be more alone than you are. Devs hinted that they wanted to explore what it means to be conscious and alone. While I haven't yet pulled a direct quote, multiple interviews emphasize the oppressive emptiness of the corridors. A silence so thick you can cut it with a knife. It's worth double-checking, but that's how SOMA's creators sculpt fear through architectural solitude.
Oh, fuck this! Fuck this! Fuck you! Fuck you, Catherine, you lied! And I believed in you, I trusted you! You said we're getting on the fucking Ark!
We are on the Ark, you idiot! I didn't lie! I can't be responsible for your goddamn ignorance! You
Fuck! Catherine? Please don't leave me alone. Catherine? Catherine?
Then there's Subnautica, a horror game on vacation. It lures you with pretty coral reefs and brightness, and then yanks the rug out. Beneath the waves, you're alone. Your only companion, the sonar ping, mocking the endless abyss beneath. That stark silence, punctuated by unknown creatures' roars far away, turns serenity into suffocating dread. And finally, Knock Knock. This indie gem by Icepick Lodge throws you into a lonely home where light is your only defense. A critic noted how you're advised to play in the dark and alone because the atmosphere itself becomes a predator. This isn't survival horror. This is existential horror. One interpretation from a player on Steam nails it. This game is about how your brain defends your ego against the horrors of reality. But as always, there are things that come out only when it's dark. So what's going on here? Designers strip away otherness, not just monsters, but other people. You become the only mind in the void. It's a daring philosophical move. You aren't playing against an enemy. You're playing against silence, absence, and the slow erosion of your sense of reality. Let's be honest. Being totally alone is psychologically unsettling. Our brains, wired for social connection, don't like it at all. When isolation hits, cortisol, stress hormone, goes up. Heart rate goes up. Your mind starts filling silence with anything possible. Darkness starts feeling alive. That's exactly what horror designers bank on. Professor Tom Blount and Callum Spawforth in their paper, Pathos in Play, note that games are increasingly using unsettling emotions, like loneliness, to invite introspection. They write that by evoking discomfort, players explore themes like loss, mortality, and mental health through gameplay archive. That's psychology and design in harmony. Game writer Madison Carr described classic survival horror this way.
All old survival horror feels really lonely to me. If there are enemies, they're zombies. They're not people you can interact with.
That emptiness, a world populated only by the echoes of what once was, is haunting. It's not just monsters, it's the lack of connection. Back to Voices of the Void. Gaming critic observations highlight how its tension emerges from silence and minimalism. BLTN.net writes, "Every time a server's hard drive shudders or a distant pine cone falls, it sets you on edge. It's a slow burn of hearing a noise and not knowing what happens next." On Reddit, a player captures the essence of that dread perfectly.
The being alone at home and hearing noises outside, feeling made into a game.
That's isolation turned into gameplay. It's less about headcrab versus shotgun, and more about the static hum of the void closing in. The absence of other humans becomes the true antagonist. Take SOMA. You're drifting through dark, silent corridors, not knowing if the only other forms of intelligence are remnants of people or echoes of yourself. Interviews affirm that developers deliberately used desolate architecture to amplify this feeling, although I didn't find a verbatim quote. Still, the oppressive emptiness of the underwater facility feels like stage direction written into its walls. In Subnautica, the gorgeous ocean surface masks a vast abyss beneath. The underwater silence, punctuated only by ambiguous creature roars, triggers a primal fear. You're swimming alone, and something might be watching. That contrast, beauty above, terror below, makes isolation alive. The deep isn't empty. It's unknowable. Good horror design isn't guesswork. It's an emotionally engineered experience. Let's tap into what creators actually say. SOMA. Frictional games. Thomas Grip goes deep.
SOMA wasn't initially meant to be a horror game. It simply came to be horrifying due to the subject matter it was exploring. The main thematic that SOMA will deal with is the mystery of consciousness. It will not be a background thing, but something that the player constantly faces head-on throughout the game.
And that's powerful. The loneliness doesn't come from monsters. It arises from confronting existence. As one writer described a sequence in the game, isolation and fear emerge from something as simple as losing your only companion's voice at the deepest depths underground.
What if I have to play through the rest of the game, alone at the bottom of the sea?
That shelf, that elevator moment in SOMA isn't about danger. It's about crippling solitude. An auditory lull shreds your courage more than any monster could. Subnautica. Director Charlie Cleveland explains the emotional core. He cites being inspired by exploring the ocean depths like an astronaut, not knowing what they'd find.
Just the feeling of exploring the deep, dark, alternately beautiful and terrible ocean depths.
This ambiguity, beauty and terror in one, fuels the game's loneliness. You're an explorer, but the ocean isn't your ally. It's an indifferent abyss. Players often echo the emotional intent of developers. A Reddit user on Subnautica put it simply.
I too love the lonely survivor aspect of Subnautica. When mid-game those last PDA recordings get fewer and fewer, the sense of isolation feels even deeper, pun intended.
It's that slow fade of external voices, once full, then flickering, then gone, that ratchets tension tighter than any chase sequence. On SOMA, players frequently describe the terror of losing your only companion's voice, exaggerating how much that brief relief mattered, or how terrifying it is when it's gone. These reactions underline a truth. Loneliness in a horror game isn't abstract. It's felt in your chest. Okay, we've got design intent and player reaction. But why does loneliness hurt? Philosophically, loneliness touches our existential fear. What does it mean to be alone? SOMA literally copies minds, splits identity, asking, what if you're not even yourself anymore? It highlights isolation not just socially, but ontologically. Physiologically, loneliness triggers real stress. Our ancients survive in tribes. Alone, our brains sniff danger. Cortisol spikes. The world feels unsafe. Silence becomes a scream. Game designers exploit this. Empty corridors hurt more than gore because our bodies interpret solitude as threat. Loneliness isn't just empty ambience. It's a constant tension, an emotional weight. Good horror doesn't invent monsters. It leans into what we already fear inside our own heads. So far, we've explored Voices of the Void, SOMA, Subnautica, and Knock Knock. But they're not alone, ironically, in using isolation as a weapon. Think of Alien. Isolation. You're not just running from a xenomorph. You're stranded in a cold, hollow station. Every hiss of steam reminds you, nobody's coming. No friends, no backup. Just one alien and endless silence. Or Dead Space. Isaac Clarke may be armed, but he's still utterly alone on the Ishimura. The necromorphs are terrifying, but the true dread is walking through vast, empty corridors, knowing no other human voice will ever answer your call. Then there's The Longing, an art horror experiment where you literally wait 400 real-world days for a king to awaken. Nothing hunts you. The only antagonist is time, and the silence between each tick of the clock starts to feel unbearable. And presentable liberty? You sit in a prison cell, cut off from humanity. Your only connection is letters slipped under the door, which become your lifeline. But you never see another person. That claustrophobic solitude becomes the game's monster. All of these games prove one thing. Sometimes you don't need a jump scare. You just need an empty room, a long silence, and the thought that maybe no one else exists anymore. So why does this mechanic cut straight to the bone? Because loneliness is primal fear. For thousands of years, humans survived in groups. To be alone was to be vulnerable. Our brains still treat solitude as danger. Cortisol rises, the heart races, and shadows feel closer. Horror games hijack that biological truth. Philosophically, isolation pokes at existential dread. SOMA asks, what if you are the only consciousness left? The Longing asks, what if you are condemned to wait forever? These games aren't just about fear of monsters. They're about fear of meaninglessness, of living without connection. That's why the silence feels heavier than any scream. And players notice. On Reddit, fans of Subnautica admit the game is scarier for its quiet stretches than for its monsters.
The sense of isolation feels even deeper when the voices stop. That's when the ocean really swallows you.
Alien. Isolation veterans describe pure panic, not when the alien appears, but when they're crouched in a locker, heartbeat pounding, realizing they are truly, utterly alone. This is horror that doesn't rely on gore. It relies on empathy. You feel abandoned, forgotten, insignificant. That resonance is what makes people write essays, share horror stories, and call these games masterpieces of atmosphere. At the end of the day, loneliness is horror's sharpest tool because it's not pretend. We've all felt it, and horror games magnify it until it becomes unbearable. Voices of the Void make silence oppressive. SOMA turns solitude into an existential mirror. Subnautica transforms beauty into abyssal terror. Knock Knock lets your own thoughts attack you in the dark. And the wider canon, from Alien, Isolation, to The Longing, proves this isn't a gimmick. It's a design philosophy. Because horror isn't really about monsters. It's about being forced to face what you are when you are the only one left. And that's why loneliness, more than any jump scare or gore, might just be the greatest fear in horror games. This has been Wolflore Chronicles. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the philosophy of loneliness and horror, smash that like button, subscribe for more game design breakdowns, and let me know in the comments. What's the loneliest game you've ever played? And remember, sometimes the scariest thing in the dark is realizing nobody else is there.